You've just been introduced to someone. Their name landed in your ears. You heard it clearly. And then, in the time it takes to shake their hand and smile, it's gone. Not blurry, not half there, just gone. And for the next 20 minutes, you talk to them. You laugh at their jokes. You remember the city they grew up in, the story about their dog, the weird detail about how they take their coffee. You hold all of that. But their name? You couldn't say it if your life depended on it. And what makes it stranger is you're not bad at remembering things. You remember quotes from books you read years ago. You remember the exact face your friend made when they got difficult news. You remember smells, song fragments, the feeling of rooms you haven't been inside in a decade. But names? Names disappear like they were never there. And there's a part of you that's always quietly wondered about this, because it doesn't feel random. It feels like something specific is happening in that moment, something that has nothing to do with intelligence or attention or how much you care about the person standing in front of you. You do care. That's almost the cruel part. So what's actually going on? And why does it seem to happen to certain kinds of people? People who are, in almost every other way, deeply attentive to the world around them. Here's what nobody really talks about. The moment you're introduced to someone, especially in a social setting, is not a quiet moment, even if it looks like one from the outside. Your brain is doing something closer to a juggling act. You're reading their expression. You're calibrating how they're feeling about meeting you. You're scanning for what they might need from this interaction. You're monitoring your own face to make sure you look open and warm and not as tense as you actually feel. And somewhere underneath all of that, you're already constructing a version of them, already forming a sense of who they are, what they carry, whether you're going to remember this conversation 3 years from now. The name gets announced once, in the middle of all that. And your brain, which is genuinely occupied with something it considers more important, the whole living, breathing, feeling person in front of you, lets it slide. There's a concept in cognitive psychology called attentional narrowing. The idea that when we're emotionally or socially engaged, our focus concentrates on what feels most alive, most relevant, most human. Richard Atkinson and Richard Schifrin's early work on memory encoding showed that information only moves into long-term memory if it receives sufficient conscious attention at the moment of input. But here's the thing. Attention isn't neutral. It goes where emotion pulls it. And for certain people, emotion pulls toward the whole person, not the label. The label is a label. The person is not. But there's something uncomfortable underneath this, and it's worth sitting with. People who forget names often carry a quiet, low-level shame about it. They invent strategies, repeating the name 3 times in the first minute, associating it with a celebrity, writing it down later. And when those strategies fail anyway, there's a familiar internal collapse, a sense that something is wrong with them, that they're careless, inconsiderate, that forgetting a name means not valuing the person. But here's what I want you to consider. Forgetting a name is not the same as forgetting a person. You can forget someone's name and still feel their presence long after they've left the room. You can forget what you were supposed to call them and still carry the weight of what they told you, the particular sadness behind their eyes, the way they laughed a little too quickly at something that wasn't that funny. The brain that forgets names is not a brain that isn't paying attention. In many cases, it's a brain that is paying attention to everything else, everything that names, by design, don't capture. Names are shorthand, they're practical, they're how we sort people. But the kind of mind that resists sorting, that keeps experiencing people as whole and complex and not quite reducible to a label, that kind of mind sometimes loses the label entirely because it was never the part that mattered most. There's a psychological concept called person perception, how we construct our understanding of other people. Research by Solomon Asch in the 1940s, and expanded since, shows that some people are highly sensitive to what he called central traits, the felt quality of a person, the emotional tenor, the thing you can't name. Others anchor more readily to categories and labels. Neither is better, but they represent genuinely different ways of encountering the world. People who experience others primarily through feeling rather than category, they tend to be the ones who forget names. And they tend to be the same people who notice when something is quietly wrong with a person, even when that person hasn't said a word. It costs something, though. It's exhausting to process people at that depth. Every introduction is not just an exchange of information, it's a minor emotional event. And the brain, trying to hold all of that, drops the thing it decided it needed least: the name. Think about the specific feeling of running into someone whose name you've lost. There's a particular texture to it. You see them from across a room, something in your chest shifts: warmth, recognition, genuine pleasure at seeing them. You want to go say hello, and then about 4 steps before you reach them, the name is still not there, and you feel the quiet scramble begin. You smile wider to compensate. You use hey with the specific kind of warmth that you hope conveys everything the name would have. You introduce them to whoever you're with by steering the interaction so cleverly that they introduce themselves. And later, alone, you feel vaguely ridiculous because you actually like this person. You've thought about things they told you. You've even wondered how they're doing. You just can't summon the word that points to them. And maybe, just maybe, the deeper truth is this: the people who forget names are often people who never really learn to process people from the outside in. They don't start with the label and work inward to the person. They start with the person and sometimes never quite make it back to the label. There's a gentleness in that, and also a real limitation, because names matter to the people who have them. Being forgotten, even accidentally, carries a particular sting. So this isn't about dismissing the impact. The fix, if there is one, is real effort, active strategies, more deliberate encoding, the conscious decision to pause at the moment of introduction rather than immediately plunging toward the feeling of the person. But it starts with understanding what's actually happening. Not carelessness, not indifference, a certain kind of attention that moves fast toward what's most alive and leaves the label on the table. The next time you forget someone's name, not later in the week, but in that exact moment, when the familiar quiet panic starts, notice what you didn't forget. Notice what your brain held on to instead. The nervous energy they brought into the room, the specific way they looked when they laughed, the detail they mentioned in passing that you somehow caught. You weren't absent, you were just somewhere else, somewhere closer to the person than their name could take you. That doesn't make forgetting okay. It doesn't make it sting less for the other person, but it might make it something you understand about yourself, instead of something you're quietly ashamed of. And understanding yourself, that's usually where things start to shift. If this felt like something you've experienced but couldn't quite explain, there's more like this here. Every week, just a quiet look at the parts of being human that don't often get named.